Welcome back to Retro Wednesday at the Titanium Hangar. This is Mike, and today I want to talk to you about bootleg Silverhawks. There's several different versions of bootlegs that are out there. I've kind of picked up a few here and there. It's very interesting and fascinating. Most of these do come from Mexico, but we're going to talk about this. We're going to do some comparisons to the original Kenner, comparisons to themselves, and then, of course, I don't need any excuse to pull out the Ramen toy version, so we're going to look at all of this coming up. All right, so first off, I want to talk about these two. These are the first two that I got about 2 years ago, and I picked them up. I think they were like 20 bucks each or something like that, which is not really a crazy price considering what real Silverhawks go for. But I thought it was weird for a couple of reasons, and we'll get into the articulation and all that kind of stuff with these guys. But these have a certain aesthetic to them, the type of the wings that they use and all that. And then the other ones that I picked up most recently have a different style to them. So I'm not sure if these were manufactured back in the 80s or they're manufactured now for whatever reason, but it's still kind of fun. It's kind of cool. I always assume these were manufactured back in the 80s, but they could be manufactured today. But anyway, still looking into all of this, but let's start with looking at Quicksilver. All right, so starting out with the Quicksilver, he is not shiny at all, and he does sort of resemble the design of the original, but the paint on it is just kind of a silver paint and all of that, and we can take the tally hawk off. Strange that he does just go forward, his arms go forward and back like this, so they don't actually go out. You can't go out with it. So that's kind of a strange bit there. Mine probably needs some paint touch up. He has place for his wings on the back. Now, I did get the wings here that go with Steelheart don't match up to the pegs. There's different types of pegs, so it's just kind of strange. So I don't have his wings, which is not really that big of a deal. I was thinking about fabricating some for him just for fun, but he does have some paint, which is one thing about these bootlegs is they have terrible paint, just absolutely terrible paint jobs on them. And then he's got this peg here for his tally hawk. So really, it's a very poor quality version of the figure and the character. Here is Tallyhawk, no movement at all to him. It almost looks like they kind of sort of copied what Kenner did in a way. And then there's the hole for it to stick on. This is it. Nothing moves. It's just a one solid piece, which of course you would expect with a bootleg kind of knockoff kind of deal. But let's have a look at a comparison side by side with the original. Side by side with the original, as you can see, the Kenner one is much bigger, and that vac metallized chrome is very magnificent, presents very well. Paint apps are a whole lot better. I mean, mine are a bit worn. It is a little bit used and old, and I didn't spend a whole lot of mine. So with this though, this guy here, it's still kind of cool to have a bootleg, and that's kind of fun. But let's look at the Tallyhawks real quick, and then we can see a Ramen toy interpretation there. So Tallyhawk, and as you can see, this is a little bit smaller, but it's almost a copy of it, even having that little neck piece that's going on in there. Slightly different coloration, all that kind of stuff, but pretty interesting. Of course, the way it connects is different, and I've seen other versions of bootlegs that have the same type of connection here as these do. So anyway, let's see what it looks like with Ramen. And there's a nice little comparison shot of the three different versions of Quicksilver. Let's move on to Steelheart. So next up I have Steelheart. Now one thing I do want to point out is when you see some of these bootlegs, they usually use the same body over and over and over and just repaint faces and stuff. But with her, you can tell she is a female form, and her hairstyle really does kind of match the Kenner design a bit. We'll get to comparing those here in just a second. And then she does have the same sort of type of articulation that we get with good old Quicksilver. You do have articulation in the legs too. That's it. It's like 5 POA. Does the head move? Head does not move. 4 POA. 4 points of articulation. Now I've got a lot of paint rub on mine, so mine was heavily used and played with, which kind of what made me think that these were made back in the 80s, because a collector getting a hold of a bootleg today probably would not put this much wear and tear on an action figure for sure. So again, I don't know a whole lot about the origins of these, but this one here disappoints me because it doesn't have the blue paint. Now, I have seen bootlegs with blue paint and all of that kind of stuff, so that makes me think it was a different company, or if it's the same company doing a different production run, but again, not really sure. Let's do a quick comparison with the original, and as you can see, the original is taller again in this case, and has that beautiful blue vac metallized to it. Does look very good compared to it. Now, one thing about her, she is probably the second most expensive, right around there, one of the more expensive figures in the Silverhawks line, and it's because girl toys didn't sell well in boys lines back in the 80s, and so with that, there's just not a lot of her, and most of them show up in pretty good condition and not a whole lot of wear. I do want to show that hair style, like they tried to copy it, but it's not an exact one-to-one, but it's very similar on the head, the hairstyle and the head sculpt and all that kind of stuff. Looks pretty close. Just and then they did kind of like get the whole contour of the shape of her similar to what Kenner did, but still not as good. Not quite as good as what Kenner did. Here it is from behind, very cheap on the wings, and it's just one solid piece. And so we're going to see with the other ones, they have a bit of an upgrade, which I kind of like. So we're going to get into looking at those here coming up. Next, I want to take a look at Copper Kid here. And so this is one made from, I believe, a different company. And the reason being the way they did the wings, the overall aesthetic of the figure, and the fact that the color sort of matches the character. And so with this, also, they do kind of model the it's like one bird, and they're all with the same mold, just different colors to go with each one of these. Now, I think this one was Stargazer's bird, more or less they copied Stargazer's bird, so that we'll get to Stargazer, we'll see the similarities there. But with him, he has kind of a blue face, and this was allegedly brand new, but the paint is just terrible. And of course, when you get bootlegs, you get terrible type of paint job. And the wings, they do fold up and down on similar style pegs of what we've seen before. It's just, it feels like I'm going to break those pegs off. So I don't really like doing so much with those wings. But I do like this style of wing. Of course, this style of wing did come with some of the later figures, and I got some issues with my wings not really matching, so kind of worked all that out. It feels like wax. It doesn't even feel like plastic. It feels like waxy. And so it's still interesting to get these kind of bootlegs and different kinds of things. Now let's kind of bring in an original, and let's do a quick little comparison to the original and get them to stand. And now, as you can see, the vac metallized makes it look so much better. The two-tone paint job on the face is something pretty cool compared to this just being blue overall. And then, of course, the mechanism where it does pop up, this has no mechanism. This does have the same 5 points of articulation, just like the other ones that we saw with Steelheart and with Quicksilver. But yeah, definitely overall, the original is so much better. This still is smaller than the original, so interesting. And comparing the birds, like obviously they don't match. This is Stargazer's bird, but yeah, there we go. He holds the bird like this, and putting the bird in there, paint flaked off on me, so that kind of sucks. And then kind of some overcast in the mold right there. So yeah, this real waxy feeling plastic, if it is even plastic, if it's not actually wax, I mean, I don't know. But that's how he's supposed to hold his bird, and it's strange because it's obvious that they didn't intend for the hole to go all the way through all the way. It's kind of covered up there. So it's just real strange how they designed this bird and how it's supposed to work. Next up, looking at Stargazer. Of the KOs, I kind of like him. Probably one of my better favorite of the KOs. Because Stargazer himself from Kenner is kind of boring. But it's really close to the same. It's very similar. But it's not exactly the same. We're going to see a comparison here in just a little bit. But I do like the fact that he's painted right here. All of this is paint. And so he's not going to yellow like mine do. He does have the head doesn't move, 4 points of articulation. You can see a really sloppy paint job on it, as you can expect with a bootleg and that kind of stuff. But still, it was kind of cool to get him. Now his bird is white, even though the bird shouldn't be white. It's the wrong color, but it's the same exact mold for all of these birds. So getting over here to compare him to a Kenner one. Now, I'm real proud of my Kenner one because I got him for like $5 at a toy show years ago, before I even really started collecting this stuff. And you see the vac metallized chrome, which does make the Kenner one better, but you see I actually have 2 of these, and I picked up another one real cheap, and the yellowing on the chest is really kind of irritating. But it looks like they really tried to copy Kenner really close, like almost 1-to-1, but again, shorter than the original. And then looking at them from the back, it's like they stopped with the paint apps halfway down. Like there's no paint apps on the lower part of his straps there, so that's real kind of strange. And then, well, the original one you did have, I don't know if I can get it to show on here, but you did have some look. You can look through here and you can see through the hole, and it's kind of got the bionic eye and all that kind of stuff. You don't get that with this one. So now let's quickly compare the birds, and as you can see, they copied his bird for the bird to include with everyone, so kind of strange on that. They didn't actually copy the lower leg part. They went with their own weird side hole, and I'm not really able to get him to hold it, and it really, to force him to try to hold it any way, shape, or form, rubs the little bit of poorly applied paint. So anyway, bootlegs, fun. So getting into flashback, he's one that I thought was closest to the original Kenner. It's like, hey, they got it pretty close with this one, including the wings, and they did kind of copy the wings over to the other ones, which I kind of like. I kind of like the way they did the wings, to tell you the truth. But for whatever reason, he's got the red version of Stargazer's bird, which is strange. They did kind of get the lower legs right, like just right. But the rest of it's kind of way off. But we're going to take a quick look at this. Now, he does have the 4 points of articulation, as usual. His wings do go up and down. As you're going to see, that is almost exact replica of the original wings. But the little pieces on the back where they go, they do not, they're bent up or something. So it's really hard to make it look symmetrical and look right. But there's quite a bit of detail work in here, and it looks like they really tried to copy it 100%. And it's strange, he's got this little peg here as if his bird's going to peg on the back of his arm or something. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. But pretty cool looking overall. He is challenged to get him to stand, but we're about to bring in the Kenner one. And then I'm going to start showing a whole bunch of differences, which the Kenner one's not really the most stable figure either. So let's make sure I got him standing. So he is shorter, and as you're seeing, and there's no paint apps to the wings, but look at the wings. They look like almost exact replicas. I don't think that they attach the same way. Obviously, they do not attach the same way. These are holes in the wing and just peg on, versus kind of an intricate kind of system here where these kind of clip in and then pop up. I didn't show that very well. These clip in and then pop up and that kind of stuff. So a little bit more intricate with the Kenner one. But another big glaring weird part here is the fact that the exposed arm is on the opposite side. So on this one it's the left, on here it's the right. So that's kind of strange. And then the legs are like neon green. So really weird, really kind of strange. Looking at the back of this, as you can see, the vac metallized green. So this is when they started getting away from vac metallizing the whole figure and just did the torso. So that's obviously the paint rub, and it's going to last a little bit longer, but it's cheaper. And here's his bird. It's like a handcuffs versus this bird. So they didn't match the bird at all. Bluegrass is another one I find to be very fascinating. This isn't his bird at all. He does sort of match the Kenner, quite similar, except of course not vac metallized chrome. But he also has his actual correct bird and well, bird / guitar, whatever you want to say it is. But he also has his hat. So they went out of the way to give him his hat. They gave him his guitar, which sticks on his back, kind of like Kenner did, except it's different. And no articulation. It's just one clump of a guitar that he holds on his back there. Now you can have him hold it if you want to. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but you can have him hold it. It looks something like this. Yeah. This is a challenging pose, and he is not very stable. It's really hard to make this guy stand up straight, and he has terrible, terrible paint apps. They printed his eye on his, or you know, his cheek, printed his eye on his cheek. Lots of paint rub on a alleged brand new figure. So really strange, but man, I would have been nice to get him to stand a little bit better. It's just really hard to make him stand. On my display, he's just going to lean up against his back up against something, so it's not that big of a deal. But let's go ahead and kind of bring in the original. And as you can see, the original is going to be so much better. But it's still a fascinating figure. Now, it seems like people want like crazy money for this hat, for the original one. And the hat is brown, not white. And then, of course, the guitar is white, and it has articulated wings / whatever. It's kind of cool. So, difference in the guitar. The guitar looks almost exactly the same. It's like they took the Kenner one and literally just copied it and didn't put the articulation in it, and then added some holes on this side. So really, really interesting overall. But yeah, Bluegrass, and the original's always better, but bootlegs can be fun. Last and definitely not least is this massive 10-inch Monstar, and he's huge. And, you know, it sort of makes sense. Like in the cartoon, he should have been this size compared to the rest of them. And so all the rest of these have been way smaller, or it's a tad bit smaller than the original. This is way bigger, or a tad bit bigger than the original. Actually comes with some cool accessories, but let's go ahead and look at those, and then we can get articulation, because this is the most articulated figure that's in these. Now, this is his gun, which looks pretty cool overall. Now, it has this kind of gray painted part to it, and there's also, I think, a tip that goes on it. I've seen other people that had that, but mine does not have that. And then looking at it, his paint on his face looks pretty good too overall compared to some of these other bootlegs. And then his bird looks like the bird should for the most part, and it plugs into his back to hold, which is kind of cool. And then you could plug it into his hand just like the vintage toy. So this one is the one where maybe I would say this is actually better than the original when we get to the comparisons. I'm going to take all this off so we can start looking at articulation. The head actually has articulation. You get the shoulder moving like this. You have a little bit in the elbow. There's no out on the shoulder. He's got some waist swivel, and he's got movement in the leg. You got 90 at the knee, maybe a little bit past the 90, almost 90 at the hip. So pretty good figure overall, in my opinion. Size and all that kind of stuff. This guy usually runs between 30 and 50 bucks, which actually isn't bad for a figure like this size, this scale, and he's big and massive. Massive. We're going to compare him to Ramen Toy here in a bit, but we're also going to compare him to Kenner. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with this guy overall. He's just like a big chunk of plastic, big heavy chunk of plastic. But yeah, the size does matter, I guess, when you're in the limbo, right? So I have to pan out to get this shot. But looking at them, they're different. It's not like they tried to copy at all what Kenner did, like all these other bootlegs. This is its own thing. It is its own design, completely, more or less trying to match the animation as close as they can for the budget and the price and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it does look pretty good, and it's much bigger, much beefier, just towers over the regular figures. Here's how he stacks up next to Ramen Toy, and yeah, I don't need any excuse to pull the Ramen Toy one out. It is a bit bigger. It's about a head taller than the Ramen Toy one. The Ramen Toy one is big, so this thing is huge. So I'm wondering, when Super 7 comes out with theirs, will Super 7 be this size and this scale? Will Super 7s be this much bigger than Ramen Toy? I don't know. We'll find out, but Super 7 just pushed back a lot of their release dates for their Ultimates, including Silverhawks. So let me know what you think about these Silverhawks, these bootleg Silverhawks. Do you think they're cool, interesting, or do you think they're just trash? I am fascinated by them, and I'm slowly picking up one or two here and there when I find them for real cheap, between 10 and 20 bucks a piece. Problem is you can get them pretty cheap from Mexico, but the shipping kills you, and very few times can you find more than one in a lot. And then if you find them in the US, someone's already had to incur the shipping, so they want to get their money back out of it. That's why they cost a little bit more. but it's kind of fun to have an alternative to the original. The originals are still the best. There's a whole bunch of different characters out there that I haven't picked up that are bootlegs that I've seen come and go here and there, and eventually I might get more and do another video. But let me know in the comments below what you think about all this. Like and subscribe. Tiberium Hanger out.
If you don't do something, they're going to put our lights out.
Take the Mirage to the artificial sun and grab those hooligans. And Silverhawks, make it count this time.
Yes, sir.
I'll pick you off one at a time, Silverhawks. Then Limbo will be mine.
Hey, kid, just in time to take over.